Thanks for tuning in once again here to Proline TV, the Ourlads Football Network, as we talk NFL Draft 2026 and specifically the Green Bay Packers. So that means we get an opportunity to talk to Ryan Schlipp. He is with Packernet Podcast. That is a daily podcast that you can check out. We have links in the description of this video for that. Ryan, good to talk Green Bay Packers football with you again.
It's always fun to be back here.
Yeah, it's always a fun time of year, even though the Packers don't have a first-round draft pick. I'm sure most Packer fans are pretty happy about the exchange. Would that be correct?
It is, yeah. And the other thing I've been telling people is I think this is a good opportunity for us to expand our horizons with the draft a little bit. I think the draft is way too first-round centric. That's all anybody focuses on for 90% of the draft. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to start kind of having a little bit more depth when it comes to the draft.
I like that. Yeah, and that's, of course, what we'll have the chance to do here today, since there is no first-round draft pick to talk about. We'll take a look at some of the rankings that Ourlads has for their positions. Of course, all this will be updated, finally updated real shortly. The draft guide is going to be coming out real soon. What do we have? I have last year's draft guide. This year's draft guide will be coming out again soon, so you want to check it out. Link in the description of this video, how you can do that. Draft review guide is also available, and that will be out, of course, usually a good month or two following the draft. So you can check it out, both for the draft guide and the draft review guide. All right, now, without the first-round draft pick, before we get into the needs for the Packers and what they're going to be looking to do as far as that's concerned, when I look at what they did this offseason, there were some big names. I mean, that departed and that have been brought in here, but mostly departed. Is that normal? Because I know the Packers, of course, draft-centric type of organization. It's not their thing to be worried too much about free agency. But has this been an offseason that worries or makes Packer fans a little bit nervous?
It's definitely been unusual insofar as not so much that, like you said, that they didn't come out ahead or whatever the case may be. It's unusual that they let go of people that have so much value. Not necessarily people that are going to hurt us because they're gone. Like, I think we'll be okay without Romeo Doubs, but generally draft and develop is the way they do things. They don't end up with a lot of compensatory picks. They end up with very few because if they have value, we sign them. So I've been trying to kind of wrap my head around what the heck is going on here and are we doing something wrong? And the thing that I was reminded of is for several years, that was distracting.
Sorry,
that's all right. Like, what happened here? For several years, the Packers, like 3 years in a row, had like 11 picks in the draft. Well, what's going to happen when you have that is you end up with too many people. We have too many receivers to sign. We have too many of this, too many of that. And I haven't fully fleshed out whether this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Was it a wasted move on Romeo, or is it a benefit to have him for the 4 years, plus get the compensatory pick and move on from there? I think we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But, yeah, I think we probably lost a decent amount of value. I don't know that we really lost anyone, though, that you look at and say, man, we're really going to hurt without him. Romeo, not at all. I think Quay, especially for that price, I'm okay with Quay being kind of a number two cleanup guy, but I'd rather have Zaire Franklin in there for a fraction of the cost, and then find somebody younger to come in and eventually take that role. So, yeah, there's been a little huffing and puffing, mostly from rival fans about how the Packers lost all that nonsense. But it's different. I don't necessarily know that it's terrible, though.
Okay. Let's go through some of these key players and what the Packers may need to do to replace them or not. Let's start with the wide receiver room. So again, Doubs is gone, but as you said, the one thing about the Packers is we knew going into last year when they went ahead and used the first round draft pick finally on a receiver, all the talk was, well, you got all these receivers, these nice second level receivers, but we need a number one, and therefore you have to spend a first round draft pick on a number one. But again, the lead in was there's a lot of receivers here. There's good talent. So even though you lose Dubs, does that, and of course, knowing that Matthew Golden was a rookie, that even though he played, didn't have any touchdowns in the regular season, if I'm correct. And then you look at, I'm not going to say more as anything other than just a back of the end kind of pickup, but maybe you'll correct me there. So looking at the 6 top receivers right now, I see no reason to think that the Packers can't go into the regular season with that. What do you think they're going to try to do? You think they'll just add another, or might add another second, third, or fourth round receiver here, or do you think they're going to be satisfied?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's fair to say, and most Packer fans, myself included, are very frustrated with the limited role that Matthew Golden was given. Okay. And maybe this is just Packer fan bias or whatever, but he clearly seemed like the top receiver that we had. The way that he moved, every time he was throwing a ball to, the hands, everything was there. They just didn't use him. And so part of the hope here is that without Dobbs, this is actually going to help push Matthew Golden to the forefront, which is what I'm hoping, which would end up being a net benefit. And then, as you said, Watson's about to get a pretty big deal. I don't know what that means. It's a complicated thing with his injury history and everything, but he's going to get a pretty handsome contract, as is Tucker Kraft. So Golden, Watson, Reed are going to be 1, 2, 3. At best, Dobbs was going to be 4. You can't pay him that kind of money for that.
Yep.
And then, Tucker would also be as a target ahead of him as well, which would technically make him 5 on the receiving chart. So, I don't think that Dobbs was all that necessary, and I do think that's how that's going to lay out. And you're right about Sky Moore. He's just a returner is why he's here. As far as in the draft, I wouldn't doubt it. I would say it would be shocking if it was early, especially since we don't have a first-round pick. There's rumors that Dontavian Wicks could be on the trade block. I don't know how real that is, or there's at least talk that teams are calling. It's one of those things where I don't know if the Packers are answering or if they're just hanging up on people or what that's all about. But the point is a deep
room. Because I didn't even I said the top 6 there, but I forgot to even mention Savion Williams, who was a 3rd-round draft pick.
Exactly. Yes. And I think you would probably could argue that Savion, I mean, he was used a lot more than I thought he was going to be last year. I think Matt LaFleur loves him and his skill set and his versatility. I wouldn't be surprised if he's also ahead of Dontavian Wicks already. So that does, it's one of those things where you say, why would you get rid of Wicks? But again, you got 4 or 5 guys ahead of him. If there's any value, if anybody says, I'll give you a 6th,
yeah,
why wouldn't you take that? And you could turn that around and see if you can get another developmental 4th, 5th, 6th round guy and see what you can do. I think if they did go that route, the one thing they're missing that they seem to like is sort of the big physical blocking type of receiver, sort of the Allen Lazard types. Okay. That seems to be the one thing that's missing from the group right now. But I don't see any real pressing need at wide receiver.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it unless, of course, like you said, they make a trade. Because there's no room. So, and none of these guys are getting cut. They're all talented receivers. So, okay. Then, and so right now, I mean, you look at it, and if Golden does take that next step, and I think he will, there's no reason to think he won't, then really that 1, 2, 3 group there with Watson being healthy, I mean, that's as good as a 1, 2, 3 that you're going to get in the league. So, and then that doesn't even mention the depth.
And again, the depth, if we don't, assuming Wicks stays where he is, even with no draft picks, you've got 1, 2, 3, Savion and Wicks is your 4 and 5. I think everybody's perfectly happy with, I don't know if Bo's going to play corner or wide receiver. They move him around all over the place, but the depth is phenomenal.
Okay. So that's at wide receiver. We'll stick a skill position here. So by the way, Tucker Kraft, everything's okay with?
Yeah, as far as I know, he's on track to play week 1. We'll see how that goes.
Okay. And the rest of this room, what was the observation? What was the talk about when Kraft went down and Musgrave had the opportunity to step up? Did he just continue to play like Luke Musgrave? Or did he show anything at all that pleased the Packers? Or is it just one of those situations where, it just doesn't look like he's ever going to be a true second-round type of guy?
Yeah, Musgrave, there's several bubble guys. This is their final year of their contract. I think there was a brief moment where there were some flashes where you thought, some of the things that you didn't like about him, he looked clumsy out there, whatever. Really nice body control type stuff. Definitely not enough where you'd say, okay, we're good. But I think this is number one. There's a good chance they invest at tight end in the draft. I mean, there's only so many things you can do, but it wouldn't be surprising. But either way, his back is against the wall. He's going to have to, first of all, be healthy, which he's struggled with. And then beyond that, he's really going to have to play at a high level for the Packers to say, okay, you've done a good enough job that we feel comfortable with you. And not only that, we're going to give you a contract on top of it. The Packers have had a real string of bad luck with guys in those situations like Rashid, who I'm sure we'll talk about. Okay, this is your year to prove it. And they just completely fall off a cliff. So I'm rooting for him. I like Musgrave, but he's, if we're being honest, has up to this point shown very little to nothing. So I wouldn't hold out a ton of hope.
Also, skilled position, running back. The big loss, if you want to call it a big loss, Wilson's gone, restricted free agent, but he's gone. So were you surprised that the Packers were okay with letting him go? And since they did that, what was the reason when you take a look at what's left on the depth chart?
Every once in a while, there's certain guys for the Packers that you just get a feeling that the team just doesn't like him as much as the fan base does. And I don't know what it is, but it became very clear since day one that Emmanuel Wilson was just not a guy that they were super into. And, because of injuries or whatever, he kept moving to the forefront. He was always good. I don't understand it. He was always good. And you could also tell they really like Chris Brooks. And that was another one where, no offense to Chris Brooks, I don't understand why, but I'm sure it has something to do with his understanding of his assignments, his blocking, just kind of being a well-rounded backup type of a guy they feel comfortable with. So I wouldn't say surprised, but disappointed. Yes, a little bit. But it was always going to happen. That kind of puts a spotlight on Marshawn Lloyd a little bit to hopefully get healthy and show that he can do something. If not, you have an aging Josh Jacobs. Chris Brooks will never be anything but a backup. And then Marshawn Lloyd can't get on the field. Through that lens, running back is a massive need for us right now.
And do you think they feel that way?
I don't know. I haven't really gotten a read. I mean, as far as all the other needs, I'd guess it's relatively low, with corner and all that stuff. But I don't know. I mean, they like Josh Jacobs. I think part of the reason they got him is because he's a little more durable. They probably think they can put some tread on his tires. But it has to be at least on the somewhere on their mind that if this Lloyd thing doesn't pan out, we got to have beyond a 2-year plan here at running back to at least start investing in the position. So we'll see.
Okay. Meanwhile, at the offensive line, now that we're done with the skill positions, you take a look at, and we'll talk a little bit about quarterback in a second. But as far as the offensive line, one of the few moves that the Packers did to bring back one of their own was Sean Ryan coming back at center. Is that where he's gonna be? Because it's kind of hard every year when I try to follow the Packers offensive line. It just seems like guys are moving all over the place. But have they settled in now with this 5? Is this what they feel pretty good about?
I'm pretty confident. I have a bit of a pipe dream that we're going to draft somebody on the interior and Sean Ryan's going to battle for right guard center, but I'm probably dreaming. I think they like him way more than I do.
Okay. And what about last year and the last couple of years? I see they drafted a few guys. Any of these guys, Glover, Monk, have they shown anything at all? John Williams?
No. John Williams, I think, was injured, so we didn't really get a chance to see him. But again, 7th-round pick. It's not impossible, but you don't think a ton. Glover hasn't shown anything. Monk, you would hope, but there's really been nothing. Kennard has been a decent swing kind of backup type of a guy. Donovan Jennings is okay in a pinch as a backup. I don't think anybody's really showing starter potential. As disappointed as I am, and I understand it, I think the offensive line is pretty solidly set right now.
Okay.
Morgan and Belton haven't shown anything, but as young as they are, they're going to be given a lot of leash as 1st and 2nd round picks. Banks, I was hoping, long shot, but I was hoping they'd move on from because he was so terrible. But they restructured his contract, so he's going nowhere. Sean Ryan, they gave a decent-sized contract to, so he's probably solidified. So I get it. Now it's not a big need in the draft. You're not scrambling, but It also locks us into a line that I think is pretty suboptimal.
Okay, so that's why you think, or you're hoping, that they'll add some interior guy early enough in the draft.
I hope so. And Sean Ryan has guard center versatility. If they draft a really solid, one of the things a lot of guys have talked about is a guy like Connor Lew, because of his injury stuff and because it may take some time, you could possibly sit him. We have a little leeway to be patient. Let Sean Ryan take over. Maybe he comes in mid-season and can take over, or it becomes a thing where 2027, we can start to move off of the Sean Ryan contract and start to look at Connor Lew taking over as a long-term kind of a thing. Just things like that. Otherwise, again, if you do draft any other center, you could have, because Belton hasn't shown a ton either, you could have a kind of a three-way race between Belton, the center, and Ryan competing for both of those slots.
And how has Morgan looked? Because so far, you're not sounding very optimistic when it comes to some of their recent draft picks up front. Of course, Zach Tom, he's definitely the outlier there, but that's 2022. Yeah. Just the last few years.
It's been bad the last few years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say I feel bad for Belton and Morgan just because of, as you said, they can't stop shuffling. I don't know why they insisted on Belton being a backup right tackle this whole time. I wanted him to be a right guard since day one. They insisted on it. Finally, the last quarter of the season, they just throw him in at right guard. So it didn't go well, but you can't expect much. So I'm hoping there's a year or two jump there for him. Morgan actually looked, and this was upsetting because I thought in the offseason he was going to win the left tackle job. He was better than Rasheed Walker by all reports. The problem was Aaron Banks got injured. And so they kicked Jordan Morgan in to be the guard and then let Rasheed Walker be the tackle. And so, again, Jordan Morgan hasn't been given a full swing at left tackle. So I feel much more confident about Morgan. He was kind of year two really starting to shape up. Okay. Again, I think he was better than Rasheed. So I'm excited to give these guys a full off season and a full season to just learn that one position and not be shuffled around all over the place.
Yeah, that'll definitely help. And they're also young. There really isn't like a really productive veteran on this team. I guess Zach Tom is as good as you're going to get, and he's still only in the league 4 years now coming up. So okay. Overall, though, it would not be a surprise to see the Packers take a look inside in the draft. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And what about the quarterback situation with Willis gone? The writing was always on the wall there with how he was playing and free agency coming up. So are they pretty set now with their room? I know Kyle McCord was a kid that I guess he just didn't work out. He was with Philly, I believe. Was he with Philly?
I don't remember where he came from.
Let me see. Where was he? I think he was. Yeah, he was with the Eagles. And he was a 6th round pick. And so they were really hoping that he was going to be, their maybe a long-term answer as far as a good prospect. Didn't work out. Packers now have him there. And then they bring in Ritter. So you think the Packers are okay with what the room looks like, especially with Ritter backing up Love?
I kind of hope not. I mean, I think the Rasheed thing kind of alerts you a little bit to the benefit, or not the Rasheed thing, the Malik thing, the Malik Willis. The bottom line is I don't think either of these guys can come in and win you a game, period. If you want to screw around and see if you can develop Ritter or develop McCord, I'm fine with that. But you have to have somebody in here that you feel like can just limp you through a game, whether that's going out and getting a veteran, which would be nice, or, we looked at this a little bit the other day about, could there possibly be a guy you draft that's a little bit more NFL ready? I know that's a big ask for a rookie, especially a guy that's probably going to be a mid-round guy, but maybe like a Carson Beck or something that has a little bit more NFL ready appeal to him. I don't know. I don't exactly know, but I don't want to say I'd be surprised because the Packers have a long history of just not really caring about the backup and just kind of letting it be like, well, if we lose our starter, then we're done. But I hope that we've learned something from the Malik situation and at least make an attempt to find somebody that can potentially get you through a game. If he's out for a game or two, we got to get some wins out of that.
Yeah, that would be something to keep an eye on. That sounds like an interesting thing because the Packers are kind of, they're synonymous with drafting quarterbacks and stashing them and being patient with them. And so it just does, unless they really like what they see in McCord. Again, McCord was someone when he came into the league, he's a former Ohio State kid. Hey, maybe, and nobody, unless, I don't know, maybe there was some people in Green Bay, maybe you, I have no idea, but I don't think there were very many people who thought that Malik Willis was going to turn out to be like this.
No.
So
zero.
Yes. So McCord had more talent than Willis. And so you never know is what I'm saying. But if they don't draft a quarterback, then maybe that's your answer. If they do, then I think all bets are up, even like a Carson Beck. I think there'll probably be a lot of teams out there that don't really know about their long-term starters that would want to draft Carson Beck in the middle rounds and give him a chance. At least to see him for a year. And then, hey, do we have a guy? We don't have to draft someone in 2027. The Packers are only looking for a guy to be a nice little long-term backup. So that makes things interesting as far as that's concerned. But I think of all the guys I'm here on this list right now, Beck is clearly the most experienced, especially in big games. And he's not a type of talent that's going to be expected when he gets drafted to start right away in the NFL anyway.
I think when I looked at it, if you're trying to find that mold, and obviously you get less of that as you get later, that's a little bit of an early pick, and that's why it gets to be tough. Possibly Klubnik a little bit later.
True.
Or even later, and again, this is a stretch, but Luke Altmaier out of Illinois, I thought would be kind of a guy that fits the mold of what they've drafted in the past. He'd probably be more of a 7th round kind of a guy. I'm blanking on the guys we've drafted the last couple of years, but he just feels like he's in that mold and does have a little bit more NFL readiness than somebody like a Cole Payton or something. Even though that would be fun, which is another thing to theorize. Maybe they like the Malik aspect and they want to play around with a Taylon Green. I doubt it, but that's another thought as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that I'm sure they'll update on this list, or who knows? Again, these are just the top 10. But you mentioned there's Peyton, and there's also Diego Pavia, Joe Finagno out of UConn. Was incredibly efficient this past year with 28 touchdowns and 1 interception. And even Jacob Clark out of Missouri State is a nice little quarterback who played most of his career in the FCS and then stepped up in the Conference USA last year. And I liked what I saw out of him. So there'll be some quarterbacks like that, and we'll keep an eye. Even Sawyer Robertson is another one that has a lot of experience from Baylor. Yeah. So does Taylon Green and Barron Moore. All right, let's switch over to the defensive side and taking a look at how things transpired in the offseason. There were a couple of edge guys that were let go. Enagbare went to my Jets, and Rashawn Gary traded to the Cowboys. So how surprising was that the big trade, Parsons comes to the Packers, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, it's Rashawn Gary headed to the Cowboys as well. What did you think about that deal?
I was shocked we got as much value out of that as we did. I didn't think we could get a next year's 7th out of Rashawn Gary with his contract and injury history and everything else. And the fact that, he had just released a goodbye to the Packers thing. So it's like everybody knows he's about to get cut. And here come the Dallas Cowboys offering up a mid-round pick. That's typical. Wild stuff.
Yeah. It's typical Dallas.
It is. Yeah. It's crazy. But, I always liked Rashawn. I was a pretty big Rashawn defender, but I think I was the only one left on that train. He clearly was losing a little bit of gas. Even Micah Parsons' brother has been on social media kind of tearing Rashawn apart for his lack of effort and everything else. He was giving up on plays. He wasn't really his snap counts were way down for the amount of money that we're giving him. He should not be playing, at 50% kind of thing. So it was time, and Van Ness ended up getting hurt, but it was getting to the point where it was looking like he was already going to overtake Rashawn as far as his talent level. So it's unfortunate we're not going to have Micah for the first 3-4 games, it looks like. So that is my one concern about the draft. If you look at the edge group with Micah, maybe you're okay with it. Without Micah, you're kind of panicked. whatever you think of Van Ness, and you have to wonder about the switch in scheme as well, whether that's going to impact people. But I guess I feel a lot better as anybody would with Micah on, and the dynamic of the team without him on is, I would say, not a very good edge group.
So you haven't heard or you didn't see much from the 2 draft picks last year. I don't know much about. Well, I mean, Sorrell. I saw a little bit about about his tape last year, but Oliver's the one that I've seen an awful lot of since that really big freshman season he had at Oklahoma State. He changed positions a little bit from off-ball linebacker to edge. So I was always intrigued by Colin Oliver, exactly where he would fit in the NFL. So was it too early for those guys? Because both of them do have potential.
I think it was a little early. Barron Sorrell didn't get to play very much. I would say a little underwhelming. I know, Packer fans on social media, they cut up a ton of clips of him, making him look like a superstar. But I think it was whatever. Colin Oliver ended up getting hurt early, and we didn't really get to see him very often. I am interested, especially with Gannon, to see what he can do with a smaller, speedier edge rusher like Oliver. I think that could be a little bit of fun. We'll see. I do like Brenton Cox. I think he's a solid piece as a number 3, number 4, kind of in that second rotation kind of thing.
Okay.
But I mean, that's kind of where the questions come in. Van Ness under the new scheme, is he still okay? And do we have anything in Barron Sorrell or Colin Oliver? Because if not, we're in a really bad spot. If so, then we got Parsons and Van Ness as the number 1. Beyond that, we got plenty of depth and we're good to go. So again, it kind of comes down to like protecting yourself against worst case scenario. Leads me to feel like, you probably should protect yourself with an edge rush selection if it becomes available, considering how valuable the position is, considering how, it's not a problem if you have 3 or 4 good edge rushers. I would lean toward caution here if it was up to me, rather than saying, I think we're fine.
And again, the same situation we said before. I guess we'll find out after the draft what the team feels about their young players, whether they dip into that position or not. And again, this doesn't seem like a Packer thing to do, but it seems like the one position every year in the middle of the season, or maybe the first month of the season or so, where you see some activity with some signings, some late free agent signings, are edge rushers. Mm-hmm. Seems like that's always the biggest. You got these old guys that are like in their 30s and they don't want to go to training camp or whatever the case, and they're only going to go to a team that's contending. So maybe they give it time. Who's contending? Would you be surprised if the Packers did something like that if they felt, well, we couldn't get someone in the draft and these guys didn't work out, or maybe there was an injury or two and we have to have some depth?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, that's kind of the situation, right? If you don't do anything in the draft, you think, okay, I think we're okay. You get into training camp and, Gannon and LaFleur are going to Gutekunst saying, this ain't going to work. I would guess you'd get on the phone pretty quick and see what you can find out there.
And you could make another trade.
Sure.
Not that I think this is especially because when you make trades, normally it's for draft picks. And I don't think that's something the Packers are used to doing. Of course, they did make a trade with the Colts. You mentioned Franklin coming over for Colby Wooden. So it does happen. Okay. So that's edge rushers. Hargrave was one of the few free agents that came in from the Vikings. And Wyatt is there. You got a couple other young players. So how does that room look?
I'm actually pretty excited about it. The one glaring hole is, if you split it up into sort of the 1-tech, 3-tech, we've got pass rushers. Hargrave is a pass rusher. Wyatt is a pass rusher. Brooks is a pass rusher. Brinson is a pass rusher. You have to go all the way down to Nazir Stackhouse and Jonathan Ford before you find sort of that 2-gap, run stuffing nose tackle. The good news is that this draft is lined up for, if you're looking for that guy. Yeah. I mean, that's 70% of the defensive tackles are 320 plus. So I don't know how massively impressive they are. I'm seeing a lot of things with injuries and, low testing scores coming out with some of these guys. But I mean, there's no shortage of bodies if you're looking for some of the bigger, two gapping guys, which, going back and looking at Gannon, he's always had those guys wherever he's been. Obviously he thrives with the Gannons and the Wyatts, but you got to have that guy on the inside that's going to be able to stuff some things up.
Yeah, there are a few guys, like the ones I don't see on this list, that are not expected to be high picks, but I think will be a good pro. I know Rashawn Benny out of Michigan. I think he's somebody to watch. Also, very surprised to the season that Zane Duran had at Penn State, but he's exactly what the Packers already have. So he's a pass rusher, so you're not looking for that. And then there's some others. I mean, Aaron Graves out of Iowa, and a few others. Kristen Miller out of Georgia is another one that's not on this list. So yeah, you're going to be able to get, especially that's one position you don't have to worry about early in the draft either. So those guys will be available.
Yeah, I mean, and you can. I mean, I doubt they would, but I mean, even if you wanted it to be your first pick, you got Lee Hunter sitting there. You got Miller, who I think is a good run defender. I don't know how far some of these guys fall. Orange, who's probably more of a third round pick, but big citrus. I know a lot of Packer fans have been, I don't know if it's just his name or what, but
it's a good one.
That's that and Corleone are the two guys that are the big, 330 plus with cool names. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I know Xavier Harris. I don't know. I don't remember. I know I just looked at him the other day, and he's massive. He's like 6'7". He's a monster. Now, this doesn't mean you're necessarily good at your job or that you can do it functionally. That's a separate thing. But again, in terms of the prototype that they're looking for, I was shocked to see when I went through just one by one how many of these guys are the run defending type as opposed to the pass rushing type, which again, I think works to the Packers' benefit.
Okay, let's take a look now at the rest of the room. Or the rest of the defense. And again, Franklin comes in for Walker. You got Cooper at middle linebacker, and there's the rest of the depth. So is this a situation where you think the Packers are fine, that they're not going to have to do much work?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them entirely. Again, depends kind of what falls to them and whatnot. I don't think Zaire Franklin is a long-term solution.
No.
It kind of comes down to, it seems to me that what you had in Quay and what they got in Zaire Franklin is more of the tackling machine type of guys. He's going to rack up a bunch of tackles, the middle linebacker types, to let Edgerrin Cooper kind of go clean up. So if somebody were available at some point, and depending on how they feel about Tyron Hopper and Isaiah McDuffie, and I do think Hopper is not necessarily that type of guy as much as I like him. But if just a stout, throwback middle linebacker type of guy was available at a reasonable spot, I don't know that it would be impossible that they would take a swing at something like that. As far as 2026, are they comfortable? I think they're 100% comfortable with where they're at.
Okay, and then in the secondary, let's see, taking a look here, the big story is Trevon Diggs and what to do there. Do you expect that they're going to end up signing him?
I don't. I think they ended up letting him go, and it's funny, that was very shortly prior to getting the new defensive coordinator. And one of the things that dawned on me is it feels like he would have been a good fit for for this scheme, but I don't think he ends up coming back. It definitely seems to me, if you just listen to the GM and find out, like, what is your biggest need, I don't think it's even close. I think it's cornerback. That's the one he seems most passionate about. His eyes light up, when you talk about it. Everything else is kind of, oh, yeah, we're doing this, that, or the other. He has been pretty, as little as we've heard from him, pretty loud about the cornerback room needing to be fixed. So I think if I had to guess, this is probably the early and often position that the Packers are going to be looking at.
Yeah, and this is a nice group, a nice deep group. So I would think by second round, if the Packers go that position, and I agree with you, it's probably what they're going to do. They should be able to find a pretty good player. So
yeah, and I think with the Gannon thing, especially with the Nixon being probably not the best fit. I also think, I don't know if the team how they feel about him necessarily, but he's kind of given off some arrogant, I want to be number one. I don't want to be the special teamer. And
Oh,
then to
really?
finish the season, he's dodging out of the way of tackles and whatnot. It was pretty rough.
Huh.
But the other thing I kind of have learned about Gannon is with his scheme and what he likes kind of the tall, long arm, guys that can kind of knock you off your spot kind of a guy. Kind of a throwback to the Kevin King types the Packers used to get. And that's obviously a pretty big contrast to Keyshawn, who's a little bit smaller. I think he's like 5'10-ish. So Valentine, I think, is a decent fit for it. Bullard is going to be a solid slot safety type of guy to do the 3 safety thing that Gannon likes. But if they can find, a 6'2", 6'3" guy, 32.5-inch arm type of thing, to come in and possibly replace Keyshawn, that they might look at replacing Valentine. I don't think they should, but I think that would be a better fit for what Gannon likes in a corner.
So is that something to monitor, the whole Nixon thing? Is that something where the Packers are?
It's one of those things where it makes sense to me, but I also have a hunch that they kind of like Keyshawn.
Okay.
I don't know. Again, I don't know why. And I don't know. I don't know if Gannon is going to come in and say this isn't going to work for me personally, and so they're going to maybe go in another direction based on that. But at the same time, if they're saying there's a problem at corner, who's the problem? I mean, maybe it is Valentine, but I think he's a better corner than Keyshawn. I think he has been since day one. I think that was a hit in the 7th round, and you should take pride in that and stop trying to get him off your team. But we'll see. Maybe they're not happy with either of them, and they're going to try to really overhaul the whole group. That'll be kind of a wait and see kind of situation. But either way, I definitely expect them to go out and get a solid Gannon type of corner for his system.
And they are in really good shape with their starting safeties now.
Yes.
So how about their depth? Is that okay?
I think so. I really feel bad for Oladapo. I feel like he's been a decent piece. He was a guy we were excited about in the 5th round, but good luck getting snaps with McKinney, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard on the same team. He just really hasn't gotten an opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen with this Gannon 3 safety thing. I'm guessing it's just going to be Bullard as your 3rd safety, and he'll probably be used the same way as sort of a slot guy. He'll just be thought of as a safety. But there's a small part of me that wonders if Oladapo might have a little bit more of a role with the emphasis on safeties in his scheme. I'm not really sure. But no, I think they're doing fine with their safety room.
How's special teams? How's the kicking game? We saw, of course, something that did not work out very well for the Packers in the playoffs, and it's a little surprising to see that Brandon McManus is still on the team. To tell you the truth,
no, I've been, I went on a whole diatribe thing the other day. I think, the Packers are very good when it comes to patience, and I think teams are rewarded when it comes to patience. A lot of kickers, very good kickers, go through rough patches. And more often than not, Mason Crosby went through 2 different rough patches where he probably should have been cut, and they just wrote it out, and then he got through it. A lot of top guys, and including guys that are no longer on our team. A lot of punters. We drafted guys, and then they went through a rough patch. We got rid of them, and now they're top punters off on other teams. J.K. Scott and a few other guys that are very good at what they do. I didn't know what the Packers are going to do, but it was of my opinion that he is a very good kicker, and not having a kicker can be something that lasts years trying to find one. And I think you need to be patient and not overreact to, a handful of bad games. That was my contention. That's not to say they won't go out and see what happens. Obviously they're talking to kickers at pro days and whatnot. They're probably going to bring in competition. There's no guarantee he wins the job. But I think he has been such a good kicker for such a long time. You have to be patient with a guy like that and make sure that this is more than just, a handful of bad games. That's again, I think you have to do that. And Daniel Whelan, the punter, is no complaints anywhere. Very good punter.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like cornerback is the definite number 1 need going into the draft.
Yeah.
And would there be, it doesn't sound like there's a really big need after that. So it's just a matter of best player available pretty much every round. And if that's the case, I guess you talk about a big physical receiver, maybe a future number 2 tight end. You got to take a look possibly at the running back spot. Maybe one of the more important ones could be an interior offensive lineman as well, and a defensive tackle who could stop the run.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, as far as like we need a starter defensive tackle would be on my list, but again, it comes down to how the team feels about stuff. I mean, if they feel good about it, it's not a need. If they may be panicked, and like you said, we'll find out in the draft if they've got some panic points out there.
Okay. Other than that, anything else going on with the team? Everything seems the cap space is pretty average. There's even though there's no first round pick, there were 7 picks with the 2 in the 7th. What's the number pick in round 2?
52, I think.
Somewhere in the 50s. Okay. Yep. So right around 52. And other than that, how is the mood with the fan base?
I think it's good. I'm hopeful that we start hearing more about, when it's first round again, everybody's got their favorite players and whatnot. I'm kind of excited to hear, and there just hasn't been as much. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm excited for fans to start getting excited and saying, that's my guy. This is what I want. I like that kind of stuff. So then again, I shouldn't talk because I don't have a favorite right now. I got to get to work on that.
Yeah. It's a little harder when there is no first rounder, but hey, you never know. Again, I don't expect the Packers to, but there are teams that trade into the first round. So
yeah, sure.
But not sure is because overall, before the trade for Parsons, was this front office? Did they not really? Were they pretty uncomfortable making those types of deals, or have they made that they're used to making these types of blockbuster?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, Gutekunst has definitely been more
types
aggressive.
Of moves if we have to.
Just some. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
You see me okay?
I think I was freezing there. No, I think Gutekunst has been much more aggressive, I think, number one. And then number two, even with guys like Ted Thompson, who didn't do much, if they did every once in a while, it's the big thing. It's the Charles Woodson trade or something or whatever, So this felt like that big, we're taking a big swing at the Super Bowl move. Now, unfortunately, the guy got hurt and everything went south. So you're kind of like, oh, shoot, I hope we didn't get a big swing and a miss because, we had the Reggie White trade and then Super Bowl. We got the Charles Woodson trade and then Super Bowl. This is that trade. So come on, boys.
Sure. Well, I think that's what a lot of people really expect anyway. Like once he's healthy and playing, that's just a major player. And what a difference maker he is. So had to be really a gut wrench deal in the playoffs, not only to lose a playoff game, but to lose it in which the manner that the Packers did, and not having Parsons and not having Tucker Kraft, and still being put in a situation where it looks like they should have at least moved on to the next round. But I still think that, again, from my point of view, outside of Packerland, there does still seem to be a lot to hope for. And there's no reason to think that if, health-wise, if that works out, and maybe a couple of good moves as far as, personnel from this offseason, Packers going to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Seattle won a Super Bowl. And there's no reason to think that the Packers don't have the type of talent that Seattle does if everything falls into place.
Yeah, give me health, and maybe the offensive line takes a half a step, and I'm comfortable.
All right, so that wraps it up, Ryan. Appreciate it as always. Again, your Packernet podcast can be seen daily. Is that correct?
It is. It's we got four podcasts I'm putting out every day. So
4. Okay. Sounds good. You're not too busy. And that's regular streaming services like Apple and so forth?
Yep. You can find it pretty much anywhere you got your podcasts.
Excellent. All right, Ryan, I appreciate it. I'll be talking about the New England Patriots on Friday, so check that out. Same time, actually, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Proline TV, the Ourlads Football Network. Also, don't forget, links in the description where you can check out Ryan's work, and also get the Ourlads Draft Guide for the 2026 NFL Draft. We'll see you guys real soon with a